You got a friend in me. Richard, have you got a friend in me?
No.
Oh. What? You don't remember what your old pal said?
Yeah.
When you're
You'll have to
miles and
remind me.
miles from your nice warm bed. I know, like pieces of that song, but not not in any order or any, like because I've only ever heard it when watching Toy Story movies. I've never been like, I'm gonna listen to "You've Got a Friend in Me."
Really, I had the soundtrack on cassette, and it had like a lyric book. But anyway, why
That's
are we
cool.
talking about this? Why are we talking about "You've Got a Friend in Me"?
Because it's National Friendship Month. It was actually National Podcast Appreciation Day or something the other day, and
I'm sure that's
we didn't
like
post anything.
because no one appreciates our podcast.
No, that's true. No, we're talking about "You've Got a Friend in Me" because this is film franchise Fortnights on the Cod Pop podcast, a podcast where myself, AJ, and my friend Richard, we watch,
Richard,
and his friend in him, AJ. You are the friend in me.
oh my god, the friend was in me all along.
We watch an entire film franchise in a fortnight, and then we get together and discuss that franchise. And this was our second franchise chosen by our Patreon $1 supporters.
Woo,
They suggested
$1 or more.
Yeah, $1 or more. And they suggested and voted for T-Story. T-Story.
The story.
Yeah. The adventure is called The Story.
Yeah, Toy Story. It's a trilogy of 3 films, which started back in 1995 with Toy Story, directed by John Lasseter. And what's that about, AJ? And can you tell me, doing your best Woody impression?
Buzz! I can't do any impressions. You
Buzz!
told me you were going to get me to do impressions this episode, and I was practicing, and I was like, these are so bad. All right. You're not a space ranger!
Yeah, it's the Ranger!
Ranger! Toy Story!
Okay, what impression are you best at then? You can do that.
I could probably do a good Slinky Dog impression.
All right, okay. As Slinky, voiced by Jim Varney,
Yeah.
and later Blake Clark,
Yeah.
what is Toy Story about?
Toy Story 1 is about a a sentient group of toys who in a world where every toy is sentient, and they live in a house where they're played with by a little boy named Andy, and the leader is man, I thought I could do this better than I can. The leader is a cowboy toy named
Do you
Woody.
remember what he sounds like?
He's got a gruff voice.
I may not be a smart dog, but
I
I
may
know
not
what
be a-
roadkill is.
I may not be a smart
That's it.
dog. And so Woody, there we go.
Yeah, hey.
Woody is the leader of the toys, and everybody looks up to Woody, and he's Andy's favorite toy. And then it's Andy's birthday, and one of his presents is a Buzz Lightyear action figure, which is a space toy, a space ranger. And Buzz kind of takes Woody's place as Andy's favorite toy, and Andy's really jealous, and the two end up going on a whirlwind adventure to become friends and to realize each other's place in the world, I guess.
Yeah, all right. And what is Toy Story 2 in 1999? And what did that... Bleh. Toy Story 2 came out in 1999. It was also directed by John Lasseter. And what is that about? Rex.
Oh, that's the hardest one, man. What? Okay, how would you describe Wallace Shawn's voice? Describe it for me, and I'll do the
He
description.
sounds like the dinosaur from Toy Story.
I can't do it. It's like, I know it's
Hi, bitch. I was pressing my Adam's apple. This is about as Wallace Shawn as I can get. Is this
And,
good enough?
There's a bit of a lisp.
A
and
lisp?
It's very loud.
Yeah, I don't want to go too loud, though.
Yeah.
Toy Story
Anyway.
2 is
No, you can just do it as AJ.
No.
We don't want to, we don't want to alienate our audience.
Toy Story 2 is set a couple years later, and everyone's friends now. But Woody accidentally ends up in a yard sale and is stolen by a toy collector named Al, who runs a toy shop. And basically, the toys back at Andy's house decide to go and save Andy from Al's toy barn save Andy, imagine that movie. Save Woody from Al's toy barn. And while they're there, while Woody's there, he meets like other characters from the extended back catalogue of Woody's brand, because Woody was actually the star of a really old TV show. And that's why he's such a collectible now, is because this TV show is kind of a cult classic. And so it's complicated, because now Woody feels like he should stay with his new friends, because he learns about the tragedy that befalls every toy's life when their owner outgrows them. And so he's like, maybe it's not even worth it going back to Andy. Very existential crisis-y kind of story. But eventually he and most of his new friends, because one of them betrays him, they journey back to Andy's house, where they all enjoy what they can of. It's kind of this melancholy coming to terms with enjoying what you've got until it's gone.
And if you like accepting your own mortality, then you'll love Toy Story 3, which came out a full 11 years later in 2010. That was directed by Lee Unkrich. And what is that one about?
What voice am I gonna butcher here?
Buzz.
Buzz, Lightyear to the rescue. But Buzz is just a normal voice. It's more like his vocabulary that's more impressive about him than his.
Right, okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think I can do any other voices, actually, so maybe that's for the best. Toy Story 3 is set probably about the same amount of time later as...
Oh, actually, no. Can you do it as Lotso? Lotso Hagenbeer.
Lotso. Well, is this Lotso's voice? If this is Lotso's voice, then I can do it in this voice. So, Andy's all grown up now, and and all the toys are feeling rejected. So all the toys are feeling rejected, and
good decision.
They've completely lost their will to to live, basically. And Andy's going to college, and he's going to take Woody with him, and he means to put the other toys in his attic, but they accidentally wind up in a box going to preschool, like daycare. And so Woody joins them, and he's like, all right, I found you guys, let's go back to Andy's. And they're like, no, we don't want to go back to Andy's. This one's quite a complicated plot. Basically, the daycare center is run in like a totalitarian society by Lotso, who's this teddy bear who was like similar to previous stories in the Toy Story universe, was kind of unintentionally abused by his owner, and so now he thinks that daycare is basically where it's at, and so they eventually learn they're not that keen on daycare, so they escape. They end up at a dump where they nearly get burned alive in a furnace. It's very intense. And then before they wind up back at Andy's house, where he donates them to a loving and very age-appropriate little girl who can play with the toys now and give them the fulfillment they desire as toys.
Yeah, because the whole thing is like that a toy desires more than anything to be played with, I guess you'd say. So, AJ, I think it's probably pretty safe to say that these are good films, yeah?
This, this is a perfect trilogy, I think. It's probably the closest we have to in the world of franchises as an accessible perfect trilogy. I'd say the other big contender would be Lord of the Rings, but, you know, not a lot of people are going to sit through Lord of the Rings. Like, these are easily digestible films with fantastic stories. And I don't know if I'd say each one gets better as it goes along, but I certainly would say each one is as good as the other. Like, there's not a definitive best Toy Story film, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. So, what would you guess, AJ, that Toy Story has on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's maybe like 98, I think.
It's 100%.
It is 100% now. Okay.
Yeah.
There was like Toy Story is actually quite a, like it's like a chapter in the Rotten Tomatoes book, you know, because there's when Paddington 2 scored 100% with whatever many critics, it bet Toy Story 2, right?
Yeah, so what is Toy Story 2 rated on Rotten Tomatoes?
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
But it has
It's
more critics, so it means it was voted 100% by more people than Toy Story 1.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Toy Story 2 is the third highest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes, behind only Paddington 2 and Leave No Trace, which is like a film that came out earlier this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, yes, that's strange. But, yeah, and the original Toy Story is the 10th highest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, what would you guess that Toy Story 3 has on Rotten Tomatoes? We've got 100. What does it have?
I think it's like 99, right?
It is 99.
Because there's that one critic who...
Yep. So it was on 100%, and it had its perfect streak broken by a guy called Armand White, who is notorious for going against the grain. So I've pulled up some of his things just to get you an idea of what this guy's kind of film opinions, and this is an actual paid reviewer. Okay, so he called 8th Grade indie movie self-pity, thumbs down. Black Panther turned politics into politricks, thumbs down. Call Me By Your Name was trite, thumbs down. Blade Runner 2049, the awesomeness is gone, thumbs down. Wonder Woman had childlike enthusiasm but no passion. Colossal was a tribute to misandry, and Get Out was an attenuated comedy sketch.
Wow.
And his review of Toy Story 3 didn't really have like a concise burn or anything like that. He said Toy Story 3 is so besotted with brand names and product placement that it stops being about the innocent pleasures of imagination, the usefulness of toys, and strictly celebrates consumerism. Now you're like, is there anything this guy does like? Well, there is. He loved Transformers The Last Night, called it a unique big screen spectacle. The Boss Baby was a surprisingly imaginative animated movie. Dirty Grandpa, he says, you'd have to be humorless and sex-averse to be offended by its deliberate naughtiness, as so many critics have demonstrated. Batman v Superman boldly challenged popular culture's current decay. Your Highness personalised the genre enthusiasm of the Star Wars generation, and of course Grown Ups was cheerful and surprisingly heartfelt.
All right, I don't want to talk about this guy anymore. It's just so annoying. Like, obviously I can take differing opinions, but this guy, just the specific films, it feels like he's gone. Deliberate. Everybody likes this. Yeah, it's deliberate. It's not his organic opinion. It feels like he wants to just go against the grain, and that's immature of him. So screw you, Armand White. Is that his name?
Yep. Don't expect us to get him on the podcast.
No. Although, no.
All right. Now, one thing as well that these films have, like a lot of films, is a cast. And it's got a very good cast, I would say. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say an actor, and then you give me the part they played in the film. So we'll it's got a stat cast, and want to include you on this.
This
as well.
is a whole trilogy.
Yeah, so I'll go through the first film. Okay. So we have Tom Hanks as
Woody.
Woody. Do you know Woody's last name?
The cowboy.
No, it's Woody Pride. Fun fact. It was in the official toys released for the third film. Has his last name, Woody Pride.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Tim Allen.
Buzz Lightyear.
Yep. Don Rickles.
He is Mr. Potato Head.
Yep. Jim Varney.
He's Slinky.
Yep. Wallace Shawn.
Rex.
Yep. John Ratzenberger.
Ham.
Annie Potts.
Bo Peep.
Yep. Laurie Metcalf.
Andy's mum.
R. Lee Ermey.
Is he's the green sergeant?
Yeah, the bucket of soldiers.
Yeah.
And Penn Jillette.
Oh shit. In the first film, Penn Jillette.
Yeah. Of Penn and Teller fame.
Yeah. He would be. Oh, I don't know. Who does Penn Jillette play?
He is the announcer in the Buzz Lightyear toy commercial.
Ha! That's awesome. I was watching.
Yeah.
That stuck out to me. So I wonder if that's why. It's because I recognized the voice. That's hilarious.
All right, so stacked cast for that film, and AJ, you did very well. So
Thank you.
The sequel adds Joan Cusack
As Jessie the cowgirl.
and Kelsey Grammer,
As Stinky Pete, the old prospector.
Wayne Knight.
As Al from Al's Toy Barn.
Do you know Al's last name?
No, what is it?
McWiggin.
This is
It's
so
on a plaque
fascinating.
at his desk. Jodie Benson.
Or she would be.
She's the voice of the Little Mermaid as well, if you don't recognise the name.
Oh, she's Barbie.
Yep, she is. And Estelle Harris.
I don't know who's that.
Mrs. Potato Head.
Oh, of course. Yes. Yep. No, I did know that.
And so, adding cast, pretty much everyone from the first film returned as well. And then for 3, we had Ned Beatty.
Who was he? He was Lotso.
Yeah, he's Lotso.
Yeah.
You've got Blake Clark.
Did he replace Jim
Yeah.
Varney?
Yeah, so he replaced Jim Varney as Slinky Dog because Jim Varney sadly passed away in the year 2000. Michael Keaton.
Ken of Barbie and
Yep.
Ken.
And Timothy Dalton.
He plays, I don't know his name, but he's the hedgehog toy.
Yeah, Mr. Pricklepants is his name.
Yeah.
Christian Scholl.
She is Trixie the T-Rex.
Yep. She's a Triceratops, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Jeff Garlin.
he's the unicorn, right? Buttercup.
Yeah, Buttercup. And Whoopi Goldberg.
Who's Whoopi Goldberg?
Stretch, the octopus.
All right, yep.
Like, she literally has, 2 lines.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
week. And same with, Richard Kind.
He's the glowworm, the bookworm.
Yeah, the bookworm, yeah. And Bud Lucky.
I don't know, who's he?
He's the clown.
Chuckles.
He's the voice of Bounden.
Right. Who plays Dolly? Isn't that like Jodie Foster or something?
Bonnie Hunt.
Bonnie Hunt, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. One thing that's cool about Pixar films as well, and you can see it in this as well, is that they always cast based on what's cool in TV at the time. Because Tom Hanks was obviously a big movie star, but Tim Allen was in the middle of Home Improvement during the first one. Laurie Metcalf was in the middle of Roseanne. And then the second one, Frasier's on the air, so then Kelsey Grammer. You got Wayne Knight from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And then even in the third one, you get Christian Scholl from Fly the Conchords and Jeff Garlin from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And you look at any Pixar film pretty much and you can tell what was popular on TV at the time.
That's cool. I remember there was a joke in Home Improvement where it was a Halloween episode and Tim opens the door and there's a kid dressed as Buzz Lightyear, and I think there was a kid dressed as Simba as well, who was played by Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas answers the door.
Oh, okay. And he gives to... No, sorry, I've got 2 different jokes mixed up. Jonathan Taylor Thomas gives candy to the Simba kid, and in a completely separate episode, Tim Allen's playing with a Buzz Lightyear doll.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, because... there is a Buzz Lightyear and a Simba come to the door and Halloween, and then Jonathan Taylor Thomas is like, 10 for the cute little lion and none for the Space Ranger.
So good.
So now that you, the audience, are fully immersed in the episode, we can hit you with some random trivia relating specifically only to our podcast. So I haven't really got much. This is, I think, our 12th trilogy.
Okay.
It's our second Pixar franchise we've covered. We've done Monsters, Inc. Check that out if you want to listen to us sounding like we're underwater, because it has terrible audio quality, but it is also one of our most listened to episodes.
I think it's knocked out of the top 10 now, though. It used to be
phew.
in the top 10.
And also, fun fact, and we'll cover this more later, but this is the second trilogy we've covered, which won't be a trilogy this time next year.
Yeah.
With Pupstar, because Pupstar is getting a new film next month, and Toy Story 4 spoiler alert, is coming out in June next year.
This is the first time we've mentioned on pod that Pupstar's getting a new film, but if you do follow us on Twitter, you will see us for a couple of weeks there, we were hounding, no pun intended, the Pupstar Twitter to try and get any modicum of a response, and they didn't even retweet us. Like they did not interact with us at all on Twitter. So.
Yeah. But they're not. It's not like they don't interact with anyone.
Yeah,
they've seen our tweets clearly.
They have less followers than us, so it's not like
So AJ, do you want to get emotional first or factual first?
Let's get factual first.
Let's get factual.
Yeah.
I want to get factual. Okay. That didn't land, but all right.
It landed.
So
it fell with style. Hey.
Also, so I'm hoping that you, the listener, have seen Toy Story, because I feel like this is one of the franchises where we don't need to hold your hand through it.
This is required reading for film franchise Fortnights.
Yeah, because there's some when we cover a franchise like Hellraiser, we're assuming that no one listening to this has seen them, and you want to be like, oh, there's 10 of those, fuck. Yeah. Whereas Toy Story, this is one where it's you're in for the ride. You know what these are about. Yeah. Come on, don't fucking kid yourself.
Yeah.
So Toy Story was, of course, the first feature-length 3D animated film. Mm-hmm. And apparently, John Lasseter, the director and the creative voice behind it, he tried to originally pitch The Brave Little Toaster as a fully computer-animated film to Disney, but the idea was rejected and John Lasseter was fired. That's how it's written on Wikipedia. They're just no, get out. What the fuck are you thinking?
It's not even
3D animated.
That crazy of an idea, but it's that's such a bad idea that you are gone.
But then he left Disney and was one of the founding members of Pixar, which was purchased by Apple and Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. There he made a film called Tin Toy, which is from the point of view of a toy. It won Best Animated Short at the 1988 Academy Awards, and then after that was after he won an Oscar, Disney were like, fuck. And they were like, we need to get John Lasseter back. So he was like, I can either go back to Disney and just be a director, or I can stay at Pixar and be a god. And he actually said that he could stay at Pixar and make history, he felt. So let's get into the development of Toy Story. Mm-hmm. So originally it followed Tinny, which was the tin toy from Tin Toy, and the villainous Woody, a ventriloquist doll who was like a ruthless dictator that all the toys would rally against. Eventually they were like, Tin Toys are stupid and old, so they made him into a little space ranger called Lunar Larry. Okay. And of course, that Lunar Larry was soon renamed to Tempest from Morph.
Stop us.
And film history was made.
We need to get to Buzz Lightyear. We need to get to, you know what I mean? So it feels like we're so far away from a good idea yet.
Yeah. Well, eventually, he was renamed Buzz Lightyear after Buzz Aldrin, and Lightyear after how far light can travel in a year. And then it was actually Bud Lucky, who I mentioned earlier. He suggested making Woody a cowboy, and they were like, fuck, yeah, sci-fi and Western, mash them together. That's a great idea.
I mean, that doesn't play in the film too much, but it's a good idea. Yeah.
The juxtaposition of the two characters works well.
Yeah.
And so Joss Whedon came on board. Joss Whedon, you guys might recognize from ruining Justice League.
Ruining? Making it
No,
worse.
the shit posting groups that I follow blame Joss Whedon.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, he did the Avengers and Buffy and whatnot. But so he came in and did some rewrites, including pitching the idea to give the toys voices.
No.
Apparently, that's one of those things I've only seen like in one place, but I can't find other evidence of. So that may or may not be true, but that's ridiculous if it is.
So they
just
still
coming
they were
and reading
still
the script and being like,
yeah.
huh, what if they could talk?
They were still alive though. They would still move around and interact, presumably.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's not like it was like a Kuleshov effect movie where it's like you just film the toys static reading, off each other, and then you, the audience, infer emotion from the
that'd
way
be great though.
I don't know if it could be a trilogy of 90-minute movies.
Yeah, and like a almost perfect game on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
So he some confirmed like changes and stuff. Apparently the script was horrendous when he got to it, and there was a lot of during development Woody was just like this bitter, sarcastic prick the whole time, and Joss Whedon helped him transform into the lovable Woody he is today. And there is a lot of bitterness and jealousy in the first film as well, but it's likable. But if you really sit down and analyze Woody's behavior, a lot of it is kind of like mean-spirited.
Woody's kind of the villain of Toy Story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sid's the villain.
Yeah, but Sid in our world is just a creative kid, breaking his own property. Like,
yeah, he didn't realize that they were sentient.
Yeah.
But yeah, so apparently there was discussion about making the film a musical, and Joss Whedon said no, because there's actually really good reading his reasons why. Because he's like, this is a buddy film about two characters who aren't willing to admit what they want, so they're not just going to sing about what they want.
Right. I like it.
Yeah, and he made the decision that Buzz is unaware that he's a toy, and he also added the character Rex.
Oh, cool. Buzz not being aware he's a toy might be like one of the most famous Reddit shower thoughts of all time, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about it now.
All right.
So,
did you want me to take it? I could say.
Yeah,
okay.
no.
Okay. So the joke goes that if all the toys. You've seen Toy Story, but I'm so used to explaining every little piece of a film on this podcast. So the toys, they can't let humans know that they're sentient. So whenever Andy comes to the room, they go back to wherever they were left and they become inanimate again, or at least fake being inanimate. Buzz, however, believes he is actually a space ranger on another planet and doesn't think he's a toy. And yet, when Andy is in the room, like the others, he becomes inanimate again. And to nix the first theory, it is not involuntary. They choose to be inanimate, because later on in the film, the way that Woody takes down Sid is that he talks to him and freaks him out. So it is a choice that Buzz makes to be inanimate despite thinking he's an actual space ranger.
Right. I don't think that necessarily debunks it.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm happy to accept the fact that it's a reflex.
Right.
And I mean, like, and that makes like the point that Woody speaks to Sid at the end and freaks him out. That's like more special, that like, oh my god, a toy has done this, because it's just like unheard of.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing is that, like, I mean, it's not something I'm like, oh, it breaks the film, and people are like, yeah, I can't enjoy Toy Story anymore because of it. Like, it's either that or he's just imitating what everyone else is doing because he's under strange land. Like, and it's not like, like toys might have this like inherent knowledge that this is a thing you do, especially if he's been in like hypersleep or whatever he calls it in his box. He's aware of doing that, freezing and appearing as to be a toy. So he sees everyone else do that and does it as well.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you landed on a strange planet and feet start coming out the doors and everyone just raises their right hand, you would just do it as well.
Yeah.
Because
totally.
it's not like, oh, they're pretending to be asleep. How do I do that? It's just something that everyone knows how to do.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry if I've offended anyone who doesn't have a right hand.
You definitely did. So, do you mind if I take us off on a tangent here? Something that I prepared that's related to what we were just talking about. This could be real bad, and if it's not good content, we'll just cut it out of the episode. So,
Okay.
So I was thinking about that, about the old, how does Buzz know to freeze or become inanimate if he thinks he's a real person? And personally, I think there are some much more pressing questions about the Toy Story universe.
Oh, okay. And let's try and answer them on a new segment I like to call...
I have some questions. Is the name of the segment. This won't be a every episode segment. I thought if this works, it could be a fun one to do for particularly heavy world building in films, just to like pick it apart. So I have a few more questions about Toy Story, and we're gonna answer them together, whether there be an actual answer or a funny answer or just a yes or no answer. So the first one I wrote down is: do the batteries give the toys life? Like, if a toy has no batteries, are they dead? Because while the toys are panicking about Andy's party, Woody comments, "Save your batteries, guys." And then later, while racing RC, the remote control car, towards the moving truck, RC runs out of battery and looks like visually distressed and tired, and like it's taking it out of him. So what do you think?
I think yes. I think this is a yes. It does give them life. And Toy Story 3, when Lotso's giving them a tour of the daycare, he mentions they're like relaxation facilities, and they've got a spa there. And he says we've got like more like batteries to last like 100 lifetimes or something like that.
Nice.
So something along those lines. So yeah, I think
there are toys that don't have batteries. So is it a case of like toys with batteries need the batteries to stay alive, but toys without it don't need them? Like,
well, then actually just thinking about it, because like Woody has batteries to run his voice box, because he's got a pull string on the back of him, and so would he? Would he? Like, would he still be able to move and just not, pull string, or would he just? I
think he would. I reckon it's the strictly plastic, non-plush toys like RC, or maybe even Buzz, who need batteries to move because their arms and their limbs aren't malleable, whereas Woody's got fluffy, squishy, plushy.
Yeah, well, because we see Buzz with by and large batteries and
Toy Story 3. True. All right, my next question is, how can the toy soldiers see through their binoculars? So the little green army men, not to be confused with the little green men, who are different characters, they in the first movie, while they're spying on Andy's party and like talking through the walkie-talkie, the sergeant, who we talked about before, he looks through his binoculars to see, and we see through his perspective the presence that he's spying on. But we also see that the binoculars are solid plastic. So do the army toys possess the ability to see through the binoculars because they serve a purpose for that particular toy? And if that's true, why doesn't Buzz's laser work on other toys?
What do you mean about Buzz's laser, sorry?
Well, so if the binoculars are solid plastic, they're not actual binoculars, but they work for the sergeant as binoculars. So
yes.
Therefore, we can glean that if a object made for the toy works for the toy, then
then Buzz's laser should be deadly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Once again, I'm going to have to disagree with you. Because the binoculars aren't something that he's holding. It's an extension of his hand.
Okay. Cool.
Because they're fused to him. So, if you say how can he look through them, then you have to be like, well, how can he see? Because he doesn't have eyes. He's just molded plastic.
That's
and
cool.
then you have to go, he's just a toy. He shouldn't be able to move. And the whole argument.
That's like
so
the theory that the cars in the Cars movies are actually giant bugs in shells. Like, and if you take off the armor, they're just like squishy flesh monsters because they've got like eyelids. So there's some organic materials in there. Cool.
Yes. So I think because the same ability that allows them to see and move allows them to do that.
All right, I've got 2 more questions for now, and maybe we can come back to it after a little bit. Maybe we can keep dropping into this section. So the next 2 questions I've got: does RC's controller override his own ability to move independently?
Yep. We see that happen.
Yep. Cool. So does that apply to other toys? I guess remote control toys are a specific kind, like a niche kind of toy, so it's not going to...
Yeah, we also see Woody activating Buzz's karate chop action, which he seems to have no control over.
So it's like hammering someone's knee. That was a weird way to put that.
That's a reflex kind of thing. But we see RC, he's sleeping and then he's woken up by the controller. So it's not him observing and reacting to it, it's involuntary.
Yeah. And the last question for now, do the toys feel pain when they're pretending to be inanimate? Because they do feel pain, because Woody gets the burn on the forehead, for example, from the what's it called?
Magnifying glass.
And he reacts after Sid leaves, and he can become animated again. So, what do you think? There's a reflex that is so strong to not show humans that you are living that you can even withstand the most intense pain while you're in inanimate mode.
Yeah. I have wondered about this, and this is your first question that's kind of stumped me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I guess it's either that they don't feel it or the reflex to act like a toy is so strong that they don't... they don't react, which, again, emphasizes the end of the first Toy Story when Woody overrides that.
Nice. There you go. All right, cool. That was my questions for now. I like this segment because Toy Story is asking for it, because Toy Story puts specific emphasis on the rules of the universe at times. Like, one thing I thought was real interesting, even when I saw it in 2010, was in Toy Story 3 when it shows you Mrs. Potato Head loses one eye, and they show the science of it, almost, of how she can see through 2 different eyes in 2 different places. Like, she sees ghostly figments of characters from the missing eye, and it zooms in through her eye socket, and so it's not like it's just, you can't just be like, oh, it's just a movie, because it's no, because they answer other shit. They
it's more than a movie.
Yeah, it's more. All right, continue with your script then. Let's go. What's the next thing?
I don't have a script. This is all off the cuff, AJ. But yeah, so I want to talk about, AJ, what does Toy Story mean to you?
To me? Or what does Toy Story mean? To me...
I don't understand the title. Can you explain it to me?
Yeah. So, for me specifically, Toy Story 1 was always a movie growing up. It was one of the VHS tapes we had, so,
It was always a movie growing up.
It never wasn't a movie, okay? I mean, I was born in 93, so it came out in 95, right? So, pretty much always there. And, I would have watched it hundreds of times as a small child, which is awesome that of all the movies that I watched heaps as a kid, that something as precious to me now as Toy Story that still holds up as one of them.
Yeah.
And as I grew older, my interest in storytelling was always being nurtured through the various things I was experiencing. And to this day, I would say, AJ, what do you do? I'd be like, I'm a writer, I guess. I would like to be. I'm not.
I like how you still, even in a hypothetical scenario, you go, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm a writer. Or I'd like one of my dreams is to be a professional writer. And so storytelling...
because I guess if it's an actual writer asking you...
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm a writer as well. Here are my novels and screenplays.
Yeah.
That have been produced in Hollywood. You'd be like, yeah, no, I'm more meant I like telling stories.
Yeah, here's my video essay that I made that has 350 views on YouTube. But anyway, this is all to say that, especially through my teenage years, Toy Story, storytelling, toys or not, became quite important to me. And then it was either in my final years of high school or just after I left high school that the famous Pixar's 22 Rules of Storytelling came out. And that, if you haven't seen it, look it up. They're basically 22 tips or rules of how to tell seamless, perfect stories, kind of thing. And
do we want to go over them now?
Probably not. I think there's 100 podcasts that go over them. But basically,
well, now there's 101. Rule 1.
Basically, reading these 22 rules, it like awakened a realization inside me that I always kind of knew this, but seeing these on paper written out, I was like, oh shit! Like Pixar are the best in the business at this.
Yeah.
And so my appreciation for Pixar grew very strong. And a few years back, I actually watched every single Pixar movie like over a course of a couple of weeks just to like experience that storytelling and appreciate it as like auteurs of the craft. And for you and me, Richard, I think the fact that we are so entrenched in the format of franchises and the storytelling benefits and deficits of a franchise that, more often than not, a sequel is bad, and if the sequel's good, you best believe the third film is gonna wreck it all. Like there are that's almost more classic than a bad sequel as two good films and a bad third film. Like that's such a reliable formula. And so, as I sort of said at the start, for me, Toy Story is very special because again, I don't know if I'd say it gets better, but it maintains a constant level of quality where you're never disappointed by the next movie in the series.
Yeah.
And so it's this anomaly, it's this proof, because I love the idea of a franchise, and it's at odds with my understanding that sequels are often real bad, because I kind of crave looking for that really good sequel. What makes a good sequel, because we're only just starting to get theory on what makes a good sequel. What makes a good third part of a trilogy, it's even harder to nail down. And I think there are lessons to be learned from the Toy Story trilogy. I think there's just so much in there. There's so much theory and lessons and quality in the Toy Story trilogy that I feel it is an anomaly in the wider world of franchises and storytelling.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, all right. So Toy Story 2.
Well, for me, I remember getting Toy Story on VHS, and in my mind, it's like the earliest film I remember watching.
Cool.
And I don't know if it probably wouldn't have been the first film I ever saw, but it's the first film I remember watching, and I didn't get a chance to see it in the cinema, and I always like my parents were always very like apologetic for that, because of how much I loved it. And so opening night we went to go see Toy Story 2 kind of thing, and also, the other thing that's great about this franchise is that they all take place in present day. Like, they all... debatable with the second one a little bit, but mainly with the third one, the gap is how long it's been, and we were that age. Yeah. So, like, Toy Story 3, which is about leaving high school and moving off to college, came out of my last year of high school. And so it was like... yeah, this profound experience. But I guess we'll talk more about that when we get to Toy Story 3. But yeah, the needless to say, this is one of those like very important films in my development, and similar to like Back to the Future, which I actually rewatched this week as well. These movies that are so good and so like obviously two of the not only my favorite films but the best films I've ever seen, that like they almost don't come to mind when you ask me about good films, or like if you were like, oh, what's the best movie of all time, it's like I don't even have to say Toy Story and Back to the Future, because it's like they're so obviously number 1 and 2 that it's like, okay, what's third? Yeah, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I had always, last time I rewatched all of Pixar, I was trying to be real controversial with the opinions I told. Like I've been a long time denier of Ratatouille. Like I'm like, Ratatouille's ridiculous. It's like so low down on my list of my favorite Pixar films and stuff like that, which I've somewhat recanted on recently, but still kind of hold true. But one of the things I always thought about Toy Story 1 was I was like, it always really annoyed me when people would be like, oh, Toy Story is my favorite Pixar movie, because I feel like the people at Pixar would be really offended by that. Like, oh,
having it be the first one.
Yeah, our first attempt is your favorite. And so I was always kind of being like, the sequels are so much better than Toy Story 1. But then watching it I would have been about 18 when I last watched it. Watching it at 25, I was like, this is so much better than I remember it being. But it's still good. It was still good in my memory. But watching it now, like the little bits and pieces that he says, like I mentioned before, how he's like, save your batteries, guys. You know, I was like, I don't remember this line when I last watched it. I don't remember like him talking about the different meetings they were going to have as a community meetings that were like distinctly related to being a toy. Like I think it's in the third one. You hear they're going to have a meeting on what to do if you or part of you is swallowed, which is like, it's like, great, this is the stuff that a community of toys would talk about. And, you know, so I love that.
Yeah, there's, and like the animation holds up.
Totally.
Like way better than some movies that came after it.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was Pixar, especially knowing their limitations. Like I was reading, so they... because obviously it was very limited in terms of what you could do in 1995, because this is the first one to do it, and it's crazy that again it's like not only is this the first Pixar film, but it's the first 3D animated film. It's still like one of the best.
Yeah.
But so there was like three things that they couldn't do at the time. So one was explosions. Like they just didn't have the computing power to generate explosions. So when you see Combat Carl explode, it cuts back to the reaction shot. We just see debris fly out. Also, hair. All the characters have short hair, or they like Sid's got like a buzz cut, and Andy's got real short hair as well. And Andy's mum has like a ponytail. And so, which is easy to animate rather than like flowing hair. And also, there's no liquids in the entire film.
Wow.
Because when you mentioned before, Woody gets a burn on his forehead, he dunks his head in a bowl of cereal, but you never see the cereal. You never see the liquid because it's too hard to animate.
True. That's awesome.
It's just a couple more things I want to bring up. We talked about the cast earlier, but we did almost get a different cast. So Paul Newman was originally considered for Woody, who ended up taking the role of Doc Hudson in Cars, but he died in 2008, so it's a good thing that they made that he wasn't cast, so he wouldn't have got a Toy Story 3. And he would have starred opposite Jim Carrey as Buzz, which would have been like old Hollywood meets new Hollywood subtext to it. But eventually they were too expensive, so they had to get cheaper people because they had such a low budget. But Billy Crystal turned down Buzz as well, and he says it's the biggest mistake of his career. And apparently John Lasseter eventually called him up to obviously ask for Mike Wazowski, and Billy's wife answered the phone and was like, oh, Billy, John Lasseter wants to speak to you. And he's like, grabbed the phone and was like, yes.
That's so good. That must be so exciting as an actor. No, I think it is a planets are aligned situation that we got the cast we did, because even someone like Tim Allen, who you wouldn't really say is like in the spotlight as much anymore, certainly not as much as Tom Hanks, but he does a great job. Like he's really good as Buzz, and I love Tom Hanks as Woody. I think watching it this time, I really appreciated Wallace Shawn as Rex more so than I have before. Yes. I think Wallace Shawn is the actor you show non-actors if you're filming them and trying to get them to figure out how to act. I was doing years ago, I was in like this short film, and the director was trying to get a non-actor who was playing one of the main characters, because it was like a no-budget thing, to react to his friend being stabbed. And the kid, who would have been about 13, was going like, oh, you stabbed my friend. And then the director just looks at him and goes, you stabbed my friend! And then he's like, oh, okay. And watching this, it's with Wallace Shawn as Rex, it's actually that. It's, we love you, you, Woody! Like, it's Wallace. Sorry if I'm peeking on the mic. I'm sure it has, but it's actually, you can see Wallace Shawn in the vocal booth, and I want to guess, with no prompting from a director, he's just that good, knowing the line isn't, we love you, Woody, it's, we love you, Woody! Like, yelling after him. You know what I mean? Like, it's so good at, like, letting go of your inhibitions, because you're an animated character, so already you've got to be exaggerated. Like, letting go of your inhibitions. Yeah. And going into it and just screaming a line and knowing why you're a good actor, knowing why you are playing this character, knowing your character. Rex is Rex, I almost want to do a little video on Rex specifically, just because he's such a well-crafted character.
But yeah, as you say, the stars did align, and it's weird because you don't really think of. I mean, if it wasn't for this movie, you would never think of like Tom Hanks as Tim Allen as being anywhere in the same. But yeah, Tom Hanks said he took the role because he used to wonder if his toys came alive.
That's awesome, man.
And also, Tim Allen took the role because he found out that his idol Chevy Chase was offered it and turned it down. And so he was like, fuck, if they thought about Chevy Chase and now they want me, like, fuck yeah. But also another fun bit of casting. Do you remember that song, 7 Years by Lucas Graham? Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me go.
Yeah.
So that's Lucas Graham's a band, not just a guy, but the lead singer is called Lucas Forchhammer, and he voiced Andy in the Danish dub of Toy Story.
Fun.
Before we move on to Toy Story 2, I do just want to give a shout out to one of my all-time favorite lines in a film. When Woody wakes up in the toy chest, and he wakes up in the morning and he hasn't got his hat on, and a shark pops up wearing his hat, and he goes, "Look, I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy." And it makes me laugh every time, even just thinking about it.
It's a line you appreciate as an adult, I think, more than a kid, because it's so absurd and like just pointless and silly that as a kid it's like one of the many things that makes Toy Story great, but as an adult it's like what they like seeing it isolated, it's like so funny.
It's so funny. But you know, that's actually a reference to a Far Side cartoon.
Of course,
because it's like a vulture is eating a cowboy and is wearing a hat, and he's like, "Look, I'm a cowboy. Howdy, howdy, howdy."
Right, I see. So, yeah.
Shall
I do some more questions before we move on?
Yes.
Sweet.
How many have you got?
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more.
Okay, sweet. You give us 3 more.
All right. What does Rex vomit? So, when the toys are, this is in the first film, when the toys are talking to Woody from Sid's bedroom window, and he's using Buzz's dislocated arm, which they soon discover is his dislocated arm when he slips up, upon seeing such a horrific sight of Buzz's arm removed from Buzz, Rex can be seen like his hands go to his mouth and he's like, and then he moves off screen and starts like heaving. Is he vomiting? Did he eat something? What is happening?
Yeah, well, I'd say he's eaten something, and I don't think he necessarily would digest it. But yeah, I think it's probably again. I think maybe just nothing. Maybe he's just making that noise.
It's a muscle. It's like a it's learned behavior.
Yeah. He's imitating stuff he's seen.
All right, my second question is: are the toys super strong? Because in that same scene, Woody demonstrates that he's like way stronger than his size, because he successfully throws the Christmas lights from Sid's window to Andy's window, which is a distance of about 20 feet, which I couldn't throw if I tried.
I probably could, but yeah.
And another example is when he opens the moving truck's cargo door, which I could do, but he's still pretty small. And there's
that is animated though, like it's like just needs a little bit of a thing, and then it flips
right.
up.
Okay, sure. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think the toys are stronger than like, you know, like relative to a human, if a human was that size?
No, I think they're probably Right. I get what you mean. I think maybe they have normal human strength,
like Ant-Man.
Yeah, yeah, it is because
Sweet.
I think it's one of those things like outside of the rules of the world, they are just as strong as they need to be.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Like, there's never really there's a couple times when they're not strong enough to do something, but it's not because you're a toy. It's because the thing's really fucking heavy.
Yeah. It's because you're a toy and you can't fly. My last question for now is: does Bo Peep wear lipstick? At the end of the first film, when Woody gets kissed by Bo Peep, he's covered in lipstick marks. What's going on there, Richard?
Maybe I think the porcelain lamp that is Bo Peep was just poorly painted, and it's rubbing
She's
off.
like scraping her porcelain lips. Sweet as. Cool. All right, let's do the next one at
All right, so Toy
1
Story
hour.
2.
This is going to be a long episode, isn't it?
Yeah. Toy Story 2, it's Pixar's first sequel. Mm-hmm. Fun fact. So, the development of this film. Shortly after the release of Toy Story 1, John Lasseter saw a young boy clutching a Woody doll at an airport and realized that these characters were no longer his. And so production began on Toy Story 2. Initially, it was very uncertain what would happen. They decided that they're doing a sequel before they knew if Hanks and Alan would return or if they'd even be able to do it in 3D animation. So it was developed as a direct-to-video sequel, but Disney execs were so impressed that they decided to release it in theaters. But there is this whole thing of like Disney were like Disney and Pixar made a deal where it was like, you have to make 5 films for us, and eventually this became one of them. And then the Disney were like, no, we need 5 original films because we need 5 new,
Right.
lots of characters, kind of thing. So this doesn't count. You're making this, and we still have to make more. But I think we'll get more to that in Toy Story 3 when we talk about that. But the kind of idea for apparently Al McWiggin was in a draft of Toy Story 1 at some point. I'm not sure what kind of role he would have played, but they came up with the idea of like, if a toy is like the thing it most wants is to be played with and it hates not being played with, how would a toy feel about being a collector's item?
Cool.
And having to stay inside the box.
Oh, it's so good, man. That's so... Also, just quickly, Al's Toy Barn features in the commercial for the Buzz Lightyear doll in Toy Story 1.
Nice.
Yeah. So does... And Evil Emperor Zurg is referenced as well.
Yeah. So another hiccup in the development of this film. In 1998, some fucking idiot was going through. There's a command on the computers at Pixar, which is RM**, which deletes everything as quick as it can. And it started deleting their root folder of Toy Story 2 assets. So they were like, fuck, and rang another department, like, unplug everything. And they unplugged it. But then when they plugged everything back in, they'd lost about 90% of the film. So like, okay, sweet, this is why we have backups. The backups have been failing for months without realizing it. And they were like, fuck. So they were like, if we have like 30 people working for like a few years, we could probably get it back to where we were. But turns out the technical director had just had a baby and had taken a copy of the film home a couple of days earlier and was working on it. So they like drove to her house, took her computer, wrapped it in blankets and seatbelts, like sat there straddling it, driving back at like 30 Ks back to the office.
You know, those close calls you experience in life where it's like, looking back, it's a cool story, but I don't want to experience something that intense again. Yeah.
Imagine doing that, but with actually like Disney breathing down your neck, being like, you have to release a film next year. But they ended up only losing about 2 days' work.
That's awesome, man.
Bullet fucking dodged. But people were working like 48-hour long shifts to get this film done, apparently. Yeah. And people were just like sitting there working and just bursting into tears because they were so exhausted.
Wow.
Sounds like it was fucking hell to work on this film.
It was good, though.
Yep.
I was thinking, when I watched them this time, I think Toy Story 2, I don't think it's the best one. As I said, I think they're all equal, but I think it's my favourite at the moment, anyway. I think maybe because I'm so into pop culture and media, and especially like movies within movies and stuff, that like the expanded lore of Woody's brand, I'm really into stuff like that, like learning that he's part of a TV show and he has other characters and stuff like that. I think it really relates to me, I guess.
Yeah. And like, you know, the scene where like Woody sees all the Woody's Roundup stuff with all his face on it. And he's like, oh, it's this. Apparently they actually made all of those toys and just brought Tom Hanks into a room with them.
That's
And
awesome.
that's like him reacting to them. But that's pretty cool. Another, this film has another shower thought to go with it.
Yep.
Do you know this one?
I
presume
don't.
You do.
What is it? Remind me.
Well, basically, we meet Jessie in this film, and Jessie tells the story of how she was abandoned. And she had, it's to Sarah McLachlan's When She Loved Me, written by Randy Newman, who did all the music for these films.
Yeah.
But basically, it tells the story of her owner, Emily, who they were best buds with. She was obsessed with cowgirls, and then she outgrew her and then ended up donating her, where she was presumably bought by Al McGuigan. The theory is that Emily is Andy's mom.
So, I think I have heard this before, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I guess, yeah, like, because what is there any more, like, backup
Okay.
theory here?
So this is the supporting evidence. Basically, one is just the timeline. So there's like all these groovy posters and stuff like that. So it takes place in like 60s, 70s, which would put her at the right age to be Andy's mum in 1995.
Yeah.
And also the big thing is that Andy's hat, which he's had since the first film, doesn't match Woody's hat. It matches Jessie's hat.
Right.
So Woody has a brown. It's completely brown. It's pointed and it's got brown stitching on it. Whereas Jessie has like a redder hat with red stitching around it. Mm-hmm. And Andy's is the same, but we see Jessie's hat in the flashbacks with Emily, and it's got a white strip of lace around it. Ribbon, sorry. And Andy's has a faded strip where the ribbon would have been.
This is starting to feel less like a theory and more like an intentional Easter egg left in there.
Well, yeah, so that's the thing. There is the other thing that I've never seen pointed out, but for me I was like, is that when Andy gets home and he's found that he's got Jessie and Bullseye on the bed and he's got these new toys, he's like, it's Bazooka Jane and her rocket-powered horse. But by the end of Toy Story 3, he refers to her as Jessie.
Does he?
So,
he does, because he's like, this is Jessie. Yeah.
So the most likely explanation is that one of her pull string quotes says, "Hi, I'm Jessie," because one of Woody's says his name. But maybe Andy's mum was like, "Oh my fucking god, this is a Jessie doll." They probably wouldn't say that to her son, but
Andy, holy shit, Jesus Christ! It's just
and all fucking cheese tits.
God damn it, Andy! Where the fuck did you get this from?
Yeah, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is a Jessie doll. I had one of these when I was young." Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, could be. All right. Well, in terms of dodged bullets, Martin Short almost voiced Bullseye.
Okay.
But then they were like, "No, he should be like a puppy and not talk."
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think I would mind either way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like Martin Short.
Oh, okay. So that's why it's a dodge bullet.
Yeah. And another interesting thing, Stinky Pete is kind of prophetic. Yeah, because when they're like getting their revenge on him, he says that they'll end up he's like, you'll end up in a landfill. And where do they end up in Toy Story 3?
A landfill.
Yep. And when he says like, "Come on, Woody, do you really think Andy's going to take you to college or on his honeymoon?" And that's the conflict of Toy Story 3. And he also says, children shouldn't play with toys because children destroy toys, which again is demonstrated in Toy Story 3.
Very cool.
So does this mean that Stinky Pete is like some kind of time traveler?
This is the next Reddit shower thought. Okay,
that's my impression of you, AJ.
Oh, okay. I don't assume you're making fun of me with everything you say, but maybe I should. On the topic of Stinky Pete, who's the better villain, Stinky Pete or Lotso? Like, it's obviously not Sid, so out of the two better villains in the Toy Story trilogy, which one is it?
Well, it's interesting because they're both charming Southerners, but who initially we're supposed to think are, nice.
Yeah.
But you, I'd say Lotso's a better villain
Okay.
because, in terms of his villainy, he's worse.
Yeah.
And also, we have more time with him as a villain as well, because with Stinky Pete, we get the traditional Disney villain twist, which by the time you get to something like Coco is so predictable. But Lotso, he's introduced as a good guy, but then in his second scene, we immediately see that he's not all he's cracked up to be. So it's not really a twist, and it was advertised that way as well.
Yeah.
To have him be the villain.
Okay, no, that's cool. Do you do you think it's cool that Pixar was doing sympathetic villains, like instinctively doing sympathetic villains, before Thanos? Obviously Thanos wasn't the first sympathetic villain, but it's I feel like
imagine being who's the kind of person that's sympathetic villain started with Thanos?
No, but I think the idea of a sympathetic villain has entered public consciousness a bit more after Thanos. I hear my non-film buff friends talk about how they kind of agreed with Thanos, and it's
right.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe got a lot of shit for not having good villains for 13 films or so, and then let's make them sympathetic. I don't know, for me, starting with Black Panther, it felt like a very intentional choice to make their villains a bit more three-dimensional, but not even necessarily, because we had Vulture before that as well. Exactly. Well, yeah, sure, but same year, right? So it's same
12-month period,
yeah.
Same calendar year.
Yeah, it's cool that that you, especially in something like Toy Story 2, you learn the motivations of Stinky Pete before you learn he's even a villain, and so it's cool
that's a good way. Yeah, good point.
They're not even they're not just bad for the sake of being bad, which you could probably say about Sid, although whether or not he's bad is up for discussion. It's these guys really want a certain destiny because the alternative, it terrifies them, and that's why they're villains. It's the good guys winning means that the bad guys don't get a happy ending. It's complex stuff, man.
I do just want to. I'm going to ask you a question, but I also want to. We've talked before in the past about dumb IMDb trivia, and this one, oh boy howdy, it almost takes the cake. So this is verbatim what it says on the. So you go. This is for Toy Story 2, trivia section. It says this: she has red hair and a red hat. Meanwhile, Woody has brown hair and a brown hat. It is unknown if this was done on purpose or just a coincidence.
Wow.
Now, starting it with she has red hair and not establishing who that's referring to, and also
sounds like a Taylor Swift song.
Yes, she has red hair and a red hat. Meanwhile, Woody has brown hair and a brown hat.
Then what happened was they started writing that trivia and couldn't remember Jesse's name, and they're on IMDb, so they could just literally go and look.
So AJ, red hair, red hat, brown hair, brown hat. Do you think this was done on purpose, or is this just simply a coincidence?
Of course it's done on purpose. It's called character design, and there are hundreds of concept art pictures of characters from any movie with different coloured hair and hats and stuff. So of course,
they're designing the characters. And they go to show John Lasseter, look, this is what we've got for Jessie, and he's like, oh, she's got red hair and red hat, and they're like,
oh my god.
Oh, I suppose she does.
It's such an unremarkable feature of a character as well.
I made an IMDb account and logged in just to find that not interesting.
Nice. You should go and find our review for Pup Stars 3 and give that an upvote.
Yeah. Now, I do want to ask, because we've talked a lot about, our emotional and physical connection to Toy Story, but what's your connection with Toy Story 2? Like, you said it's probably your favorite one at the moment, but like seeing it for the first time and stuff, do you still have those memories?
Nah, I didn't see it in the theaters. I remember this was back, I would have been, how old was I in 99?
99, you would have been 6.
I was only 6, shit. So the concept of a sequel was still relatively novel to me. So I remember being like excited and that there was a new Toy Story film. I remember I knew that A Bug's Life was from the makers of Toy Story, so I already had like a beginning tenuous link between Pixar films at that point, and so having this come out was like, oh cool, it's the new film by the Toy Story Bug's Life guys. The main thing I remember from Toy Story 2, like the marketing campaign for it, was the McDonald's Happy Meal toys where like all the characters under road cones, or maybe it was only one of them under a road cone.
Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, that's the main thing I remember from it. I don't think I saw it till it came out on VHS.
All right. Yeah, I remember, as I said before, I remember going to the cinema to see it, and like the Woody's finest hour and the whole scene on the runway. I remember sitting in the theater and watching that. Like, I remember where we were sitting in the cinema.
Nice.
And I also remember, I don't know if this is how I found out about the film. I feel like I already knew about it, but I have a distinct memory of walking in to a movie halfway through a trailer for Toy Story. I think I was with my grandma. Maybe not. But I remember walking in to cinema halfway through a trailer for Toy Story 2, and it wasn't like a traditional trailer, because Pixar, for years, their trailers weren't part of the film. Mm-hmm. And it was like Woody and Buzz standing there, like Woody being like, oh, we're making another movie kind of thing. And it's just against the black background. And then Buzz goes, and what would a movie be without Buzz Lightyear? And then Woody's like, a good movie. And that's like, I remember walking in and just catching the end of that, and I always remember that joke. And then it like comes up with like the logo and the number 2.
Nice.
And it was one of those things I was like, fuck, that can't have been real. But then like years ago, like since like between the movie coming out and now, I remember being like, what if they actually existed? And then found it, and sure enough, yeah. And it was
that happened to me. That happened to me recently with the Energizer battery ad. From not the ones that are out now, but back in the 90s, the Energizer battery ad, the like mascot, which is like an anthropomorphic battery, it would be in various ads, kind of reminded me of the M&M's characters. And then every battery Energizer battery ad would end with him jumping into frame, and he goes, ha! And then he smacks his head on the wall and goes, and I can't even what it says. It spells out their slogan. And after he's finished, he goes, ha! So it's like, ha! Ha! And I was like thinking about that the other day. I was like, was that a real ad? It seems so aggressive. And I searched on YouTube and found it, and it's vaguely what I remembered it being. So there you go. Back to batteries again.
There's another thing like that. There was an ad, and I feel like my sister's going to comment and tell me and say she remembers the ad. But it was like for a popsicle, and I remember it being Buzz Lightyear, but maybe it was just like similar looking characters, and it was like a rocket popsicle, and one of them like licked the rocket and it took off. Mm-hmm. And the popsicles were like lemonade in the middle, but then I think the top was red and the bottom, and I think maybe like jelly, and the bottom was blue. Mm. And I've never been able to find the ad. So if anyone knows what I'm talking about and can find the ad, please leave a link in the description.
I love talking about like potential Mandela effects on the show. Yeah, so it's so good.
So I think that's all I had to say about Toy Story 2. Yeah, like my connection to Toy Story 2 isn't as like deep as it kind of is to the other two. Mm-hmm. But that's not to any strike against the film or any indictment on how much I like the film, because I do love it. and it's like you watch Toy Story 1 and you're like, part of you wants to like it to not hold up. And just to be contrary, like, and same with Toy Story 2, you want to be like, yeah, nah, it isn't as good as the first one. But like, the first one holds up perfectly, and the second one is just as good as, if not better than the first one.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
And it does being a sequel really well in terms of upping the stakes and exploring the world.
Yeah, and again, that's what I like about it, is that it expands on that stuff. And like we've talked a bit before about certain tropes of sequels, and like you've got the main character meets the bizarro version of themselves sequel. You know, you've got the Prince and the Pauper,
which happens in Toy Story 2.
Yeah, exactly. And another trope that I've kind of started noticing is probably most exemplified in Scream 2, but it is kind of partially there in Toy Story 2, which is there's like a piece of fictional media in the movie that represents the amount of fame the first one got. Does that make sense? So like Toy Story 2 starts with a video game where you play as Buzz Lightyear, and the better example to use would be Scream 2, where the movie based on the events of Scream is made, and it acts as a way for the characters to have like a meta conversation about the first film. And the video game in Toy Story 2 kind of has similar results, as does Woody's Roundup and stuff like that.
Or like Hell World and Hellraiser 8.
Yeah, exactly. That's the obvious example.
So yeah, do you want to ask some more questions?
Sure, I do have some
Buddy?
questions. Am I Woody or are you Woody? Which one of us is Buzz?
Is that your question?
No, this is me just playing this podcast. Which do you, if one of us has to, like, okay, in the thumbnail for this video, I'm gonna make one of us look like Buzz and one of us look like Woody. Which one is it? You can choose. I'm not got my heart
let's talk
set.
about this. Okay, because you were here first. Cult Pop Shit had been running before, before I joined and we started the podcast. But, yeah. Then, am I the new exciting one that everyone likes?
I feel like I can't answer that.
Yeah, comment below. Let us know. But
I would say that Woody. I prefer Woody of the two characters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're supposed to.
Okay.
So, who does people prefer out of us two?
Me.
And I think maybe I possess in the first film I'd be more Woody, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'm more likely to be jealous of your success.
Yeah.
And you're more likely to have this like delusion of grandeur.
Yeah. No. There you go. So I'm Buzz and you're Woody. I'm happy with that answer. All right.
In all of these examples, I tend to be the main character. Whenever we do this, like whenever we like, which one's me and which one's you, I usually end up being the main character.
What does that say about me? Or what does it say about you? Because maybe, I don't know. All right. Can toys with inbuilt voices like Buzz or Woody operate these independently? I don't know why I've written this as a question, because the answer is yes.
It happens in the first one.
Yeah, when Woody is talking to Sid, or taking down Sid, he's delivering Sid specific catchphrases, about him before actually saying, "So play nice," with his mouth. Well, here's the question. This implies that the toys with built-in voices, or at the very least just Woody, can talk without using their mouths. So is this actually, is like using their mouths to speak like a choice? Is it just like a comfort thing? Like, it feels better to use my mouth when I'm speaking than to just,
Well, again, I think that
thing.
If you look at the finale of Toy Story, well, not necessarily, not actually the finale, but like the climax of Toy Story as like an achievement, all of these questions are like, it's really hard, but Woody was able to do it because the situation needed him to, and he was overcoming these odds. He was doing something no toy has ever done before.
That's
and it
cool.
makes a good moment even more special.
Yeah. So it's like an unsaid climax of the film that we haven't seen before is Woody overcoming these physical boundaries. That's cool. All right. This is a big one for me.
Yeah.
What distinguishes an inanimate object from a toy? So Bo Peep is supposed to be like as you said before, a porcelain lamp, but she can talk. And you could argue that a character just needs to have a face, but then Mr. Spell, who's like a little keyboard thing, doesn't have a face and he's clearly alive. Ham is also seen in the second film doing Morse code via the blinds with the garden gnome next door, so I wouldn't say a gnome is a toy. So what do you think distinguishes these?
Yeah, I think the face thing is definitely important.
Okay. So maybe there's like a priority list. Like you either have to have a face if you're not a toy, but toys get first pick of being if you're designed as a toy, you are alive. But inanimate objects with faces are also alive.
Yeah.
If you can play with it, it's alive. Because you could play with Bo Peep, you could play with a garden gnome. So it's the magic of children that of a children's the magic of a child's imagination that brings a thing to life.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do?
What?
Bo Peep. I'm going to say Bo Peep is obviously detachable from her lamp.
Yeah.
Because we see her be detached from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that toy is designed to be taken off, and it's a porcelain doll that you can take off. And the garden gnome isn't a traditional gnome; it's like a gnome toy that's placed in the garden as like a lookout for the toys.
Okay. So what about?
So
Mr.
neither
Spell?
of them are universe breaking.
What about Mr. Spell being? Is it just because he's a toy?
Mr. Spell's a toy
Okay.
with a personality.
Sweet. Last question that I've got. I do have one more that I'll save for Continue the Franchise because it kind of launches me into my Continue the Franchise.
Cool. I've got one I want to mention as well.
Okay.
Done this.
My last question is nothing to do with the fictional universe. It's set up in the real, like the our world parts of this universe. Does Andy share a room with his baby sister? The layout of Andy's room heavily suggests that his sister's crib is in the same room as him, and it'd be normal for a brother and a sister to share a room as like older children. Like I shared a room with my sister when I was like 10, and she was, how old would she have been? Like, no, probably older actually. I don't know, but Andy's sister is clearly like 18 months old at most, which is still like wake up in the middle of the night crying age. So if there aren't enough bedrooms, she should probably have the crib in Andy's mum's room. Is this why they move house in the first film?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, that's why they move house in the first film.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you can look at things because we don't see that it's there like permanently. Mm-hmm. They're playing at the start, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could just be that, like, Andy's mum had to, like, pop downstairs and he's like, just playing in his room and he's like, can you just keep an eye on Molly for a second?
Nice.
And puts the crib in there. I mean, we haven't talked about where's Andy's dad.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that could be why they're moving as well. As he's walked out and they need a place. I was going to say they need a place, like, more affordable, but they moved to a way nicer house. But, she's just a single mum doing it for herself. Murphy Brown paved the way for that in media.
Okay. Yep.
That's a smart reference, and we're going to get our over 30s commenting and being
I get the reference. It's just a bizarre...
you tell the bloody vice president.
I don't think we've ever talked about Murphy Brown together before, so...
Yeah. Well, it's back now,
it's a cool milestone to reach in our friendship.
My question was going to be, it's not really a question, more just like an observation that I haven't really thought about that much before, but like, how loud are the toys' speaking voices?
Totally, like
because in the first one, when Hannah, Sid's little sister, is having tea with Buzz, and to distract her, Woody goes, "Hannah, oh Hannah," and she's like, "Coming, Mom," and it's obviously loud enough that she can hear it.
Yeah. In Toy Story 3, when they get put in the garbage bag, they're like, I think it's like Mr. Potato Head is like, what do we do now, or something like that, and it's like Andy's mum, or no, Andy is holding the bag at arm's length, right, and they're just inside the bag and one of them's talking. Like, it's very you'd hear it. That's what I'm getting at.
This can't be solved by Woody just overcoming odds. But yeah, him yelling, it's not seen to be done any differently or anything like that.
No.
But yeah, like, wouldn't you notice all these like toys running around yelling upstairs, like especially having Wallace Shawn upstairs like screaming?
Yeah, to me this is more universe breaking than why does Buzz freeze when Andy comes into the room, because like you could expand this to like there is literally a plot point in Toy Story 3 that involves a security camera seeing toys move, and it's another toy monitoring the security camera. But what if there's a break-in in like the daycare or something goes wrong and they have to check the security cameras? They're going to see these toys moving across the screen, and you could say, well, you know, maybe there just was never a break-in at the daycare, but every single toy is alive in the world. That means that in the entire history of since toys could walk and talk, no human, or at least no one has come out public about it, has seen, heard, or otherwise been convinced that a toy is sentient. And
except for Buster the dog.
Buster the dog or Sid. You know, because you could go like, oh, it's more of like a they move and exist on another plane, like in Sausage Party. Like if you remember Sausage Party, the grocery items in that are seen as just normal in our world, but the universe of that film shows that in their like dimension of reality, they have arms and legs and mouths and eyes and stuff. And
if you take bath salts, you can see it.
Yeah. But in Toy Story 1. You forget, like, Sid's the key to all of us.
That's actually a really good point, because, like, about Sausage Party, because that's actually a really intelligent solution to that problem.
Yeah, exactly. And in Toy Story, it's just that they just never figure this out. But yes, Sid knows the truth. Sid's the only human we see in the whole series to interact with a toy, or have a toy interact with him, probably is more specific, in any way. And it's almost like after the first film they set a rule that this can't happen, but they'd already broken that rule by the time they said it in the first film. Because I don't understand why they don't just use that same this is totally ruining my Continue the Franchise, so you can maybe guess what it is and we'll talk about Toy Story 3. But like, what is stopping Woody in Toy Story 3 from going, hey Andy, I'm actually alive and so are all your toys, can you please take us all to college with you, because we're not just, you know, inanimate objects, we're actually living. You know, what's obviously...
Well, it must be, it's like a toy code they all live.
There we go, it's a code, and let's come back to that later on.
Okay. So, Toy Story 3 we had in 2010, and this was it's one of those things that's like, yeah, of course it is, but reading it maybe be like, huh, wow. But this was Pixar's second ever sequel. They'd only done one sequel, and that was Toy Story 2.
Interesting.
And Cars 2 was 2011, and then every other sequel they've done has been since then.
So this was the last port to call for Pixar's golden age, because everyone likes to pretend like Pixar aren't as good anymore, even though Inside Out is probably one of their best films, and that came out pretty recently. So,
and Coco was really good, even though you hated it.
I didn't hate it. What are you talking about?
You said it was the worst film you'd seen since La La Land.
That wasn't Coco. That was what's a funny example of it? That always ruins my comedic tool set, doesn't it? When I'm like, Richard, give me the like very punchline for this joke I'm setting up, please. I like Coco, and I think it showed that Pixar is still, and I mean Incredibles 2 even shows that Pixar is still on form. So
Pixar had a 7-film deal with Pixar, which is what I've written down. Pixar had a 7-film deal with Disney, which excluded sequels, like I said, blah, blah, blah. So there was some there's a lot of tension going on around 2004, and Disney was going to start work on Toy Story 3 at Circle 7 Animation, which, if you haven't heard of, their only projects that they worked on were Toy Story 3, Monsters Inc., Lost in Scaradise, and Finding Nemo 2.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this on the Monsters Inc. episode.
Yeah. So, eventually...
If you can hear it, because the audio's so bad.
Disney just bought Pixar in 2006.
Yeah.
So...
It's a very
and then I think
issue.
a lot of Circle 7 was, like, assimilated into Pixar.
Right. It's a very strange issue to have for a movie-making company to be like, oh, our mother company wants us to make more of the thing we really want to do and the thing we're really good at.
While making films.
Yeah. Like, it's a weird problem to me to
but
have.
basically, they had it as well, that it was like Disney could order sequels and Pixar just had to make them.
Oh, okay. Well, that...
And if Pixar was like, we want to make a sequel, they're like, cool, it doesn't count towards that deal.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like, I'd be like, I'd see that as a good thing. I'd be like, cool, we've just guaranteed funding for another movie.
Right. Yeah, but I think there was a lot of animosity between Lasseter and Eisner.
Mm-hmm.
But so the original story, which if you were following the development of Toy Story 3 in the early to mid 2000s, you would have seen concept art for this. And if you go on the Wikipedia page for Toy Story 3, you'll still see the like not poster, but like kind of announcement picture for Toy Story 3 that was shown in 2006, I think. So it was originally going to be about, and this was at Circle 7, it was going to be about the gang finding toys that had been stolen out of Andy's grandma's attic in a whodunit style mystery. And then eventually that changed to, well, this is what you can see the concept art for. Buzz would start to malfunction, and Andy's mum would ship him to Taiwan to be fixed. They would find out that there was a massive recall on all Buzz Lightyear toys, and that was like the poster. It's like recalled, and it's like Buzz Lightyear. The rest of the gang would ship themselves to Taiwan, where Buzz would be meeting other toys who had been recalled and were about to be destroyed. So... you might think, the toys being destroyed thing that's carried over, but actually Pixar, when they took over, they didn't even look at the script and came up with a new idea over the course of a weekend.
It's so embittered. We're not going to even read what you wrote about our project, but that's fair enough.
Actually, I read a quote of John Lasseter basically said, like, when Circle 7 was taking it over, he was like, it's like you've got these children and you have to give them up for adoption to convicted child molesters. Which is rich coming from John Lasseter.
Oh, come on. I mean, I'm not going to stand up for him, but that's not exactly what he's accused of, is it?
We'll get to that.
We are going to talk about it? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's important to part later on.
Okay.
So... yeah, when they came back to work on it, all the original character files were corrupt. And they could open them, but when they tried to edit them, it came with an error message. So they had to build every character from scratch.
Wow.
And also, the getting the actors to come back for this film, because a lot of people were like, "This isn't Toy Story. Why are you doing Toy Story 3 now?" But they made an animatic, which is basically like all the storyboards playing it, so it's like the length of the entire film with just the crew voicing every character, and they played that to like Tim Allen and Tom Hanks, and immediately afterwards they were like, yeah, we'll do it, this is beautiful, this is amazing. But yeah, I do want to talk about, what did you think of when you heard they were making a Toy Story 3?
I don't remember hearing it. I don't know, that was probably before my time of following movies that intensely. Right.
Or do you remember like
I went to
seeing trailers for it and stuff?
Yeah,
like
I
that?
remember seeing trailers. I remember going to see it at the movies. Weird how you can say at the movies but not at the films. Yeah, I remember going to see it, and my main memory of Toy Story 3, spoilers for the end of Toy Story 3, was it is the only movie, or the only like traditional kids, or like, I want to say predictable but not in all a bad way, traditional film where in that final scene, I was genuinely not sure if the main characters would make it out alive. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
with every other movie I've seen, all the Marvel movies and stuff, it's always like, of course they're gonna...
Thanos isn't going to get the Infinity Stones and erase half of the universe.
Well,
like,
but they're
it's
all
just
coming,
not going to happen.
They're all coming back, right? Or like, there's no way that Spider-Man or Iron Man or whoever is going to die in their own film, that kind of thing. Toy Story 3, when they are facing the furnace and they all hold hands and just stare into the flames. I was 17 at the time, and I was genuinely like, this is how it's going to end. Like, this is actually what's going to happen here. And then they get saved, of course.
The thing about that scene is there is a bit of uncertainty, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, they are going to get out.
Of course, but that's what I'm saying.
Because it's a kid's film.
Yeah. But I thought maybe there was like some amazing call was made at Pixar, and they convinced Disney to let them give this film this like horrendously dark ending.
But the sad thing about that scene isn't that they are potentially going to die; it's the fact that they all accept it.
Yeah, totally.
Like when people are like, "Oh, it wasn't sad because it's like obviously they." Like are going to make it out, that you're missing the point of the scene, because they're running away from the conveyor belt, everything looks hopeless, and then they fall in and they're aiming towards this thing, and they all realize there's literally nothing we can do. We all we can do is hold hands and die together.
Yeah,
and it's like
that's putting to words what I was feeling.
Yeah, that's the heartache of the scene. And especially, like, because Jesse and Buzz are the first two to be like, because Jesse and Buzz have had, like, a romantic kind of entanglement throughout the film. And, yeah, they hold hands, and Woody's the one that's still looking around to do everything. And when Buzz reaches out his hand to him, and Woody, their look on Woody's face and the realization that it's like, it's over, we lost.
Yeah.
That's what makes that scene so powerful.
Yeah, man, totally.
Not because of the uncertainty.
It's
because of it's them feeling the certainty.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and it got me as close to crying as I can when watching movies. And also,
I mean, yeah,
the next thing that happens, which is they get picked up. They of course get saved by the little green men who pick them up with a claw. And as it rises up and they go, the claw. Probably the third or fourth time I've seen this movie, watching it at like 2 a.m. the other night. When they said, the claw, I actually just went, like I was so happy, because I think there's an argument that they're a deus ex machina, that they pick them up and they come in just in the nick of time. But no, I disagree. Yeah. That's how long since between the films? That's a 15-year Chekhov's gun payoff, which is fucking incredible, man. Like, that's seeing the little green men in the first film pointing at the claw, going, the claw sets up that and the
then
payoff.
Also and then in the second one reminding you and adding you have saved our lives. Yeah. We are eternally grateful.
Exactly. That if you haven't seen Toy Story 1, Toy Story 3's ending doesn't work. Well, it does work, but it's, the way they get out feels cheap. If you have seen Toy Story 1, it feels wonderfully earned. And we saw a similar thing with how Monsters University changes the context of Monsters, Inc. with Mike Wazowski's character arc. And this is something we're catching on to here with Pixar, and why they know how to make sequels, is that it's a payoff to something that you wouldn't have expected, because it's from another movie, and so it's so meticulous, and oh my gosh, I actually just love that moment.
And a lot of people didn't see it, but Cars 3 actually did it really well as well with the first Cars.
Oh yeah.
Cars 3 is a great sequel to Cars, and I almost think they shouldn't have called it Cars 3. They should have called it like Cars subtitle.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to watch Cars 2, and you shouldn't watch Cars 2. But like Cars 3 is actually a great film, and I really like the first Cars as well. But like those two cars to come out, what was it, like 11 years apart, the first one and the third one, that's a great, they're a great duology.
Yeah.
But Yeah, also I find the very end is like heartbreaking when Andy's actually giving all the tours away. And I remember going to see this film in the cinema as well. I went after school one day, and well, on release day, obviously. But then, as soon as the film finished, I ran to the other side of the mall and went to the warehouse and just like played with all these toys. And then I got home and I've got a Buzz and a Woody, and I got them they were the tie-in release from the first film. And I've still got them in my house in Christchurch, and I still like get them out when I go down because I'm like, hey, look, it's Buzz and Woody. And I've had those toys for like over 20 years now. Fuck, that's ridiculous. But yeah, and I think I did the same thing like with the Lego Movie as well, because I'm quite like sentimental, and like I hold on to things for a long time. Like I still have heaps of shit that like I shouldn't hold on to. And so, like, Andy giving away his toys, that was like, I felt that very emotional on. And watching it the other day for the podcast, I did start to tear up a little bit. Fortunately, Jess put an immediate end to that by being like, "Are you crying, you fucking pussy? You fucking pussy." What the fuck? And was like jumping on me and calling me a fucking pussy. But yeah, and then I did the same thing when I saw the Lego Movie. I was like, fuck, I need to go buy some Lego. So like ran down to the other end of the mall, went to the warehouse, and then I was like, fuck, Lego's real expensive. And didn't buy any. But yeah, the one of the cool things as well they did with Toy Story 3, as I say, I've got like a Buzz and a Woody toys. But for Toy Story 3, and this was almost another Mandela effect thing, but I did a bit more research, was I remember there was this video of John Lasseter announcing that they were releasing like movie accurate packaging for all the toys.
Cool.
So they released like a Woody in a Woody's Roundup box that like looked like it was from the 50s, and Buzz in the packaging you see from the first film. And it's also, I'm pretty sure it's the first Buzz ever released to actually have karate chop action.
Nice.
Because my one doesn't.
Right.
But they also released a Buzz with the utility belt from Toy Story 2, Rex, RC, Jessie, Bullseye, Lotso, the bucket of soldiers, and the space aliens were all released in like what their packaging would look like in the world of Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool.
Was Mr. Potato Head created for the film, or
No.
Okay.
And yeah, it was like him, and then also like Barbie. They tried to get in the first film, but they turned it down.
Right.
And then, like, in
Obviously.
the second film, Barbie says something about, like, short-sighted, toy manufacturers didn't produce enough for, like, them not expecting how popular it would be or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's not only a dig at that they didn't, like, produce enough Buzz Lightyear toys when the first film came out, but also that, like, Mattel didn't realize how popular Toy Story would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, the whole point I asked you, I'm circling back around to it, is I remember when Toy Story 3 was like announced, and I was like, ugh, don't do it.
Right.
It's been too long. It's not going to work. And then the trailer came out, and the trailer just focused on everyone getting played with in the caterpillar room in Toy Story 3 where there's like all the young kids, and it was like, oh, this is just slapstick. It doesn't look very good.
Right.
They've lost what made Toy Story great. And of course I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I was so happy to be wrong.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. By the time Toy Story 3 came out, I was the type of person that I am now that thinks about desperately wanting a good third film in a series. And so getting Toy Story 3 at the time that we got it was actually like, hallelujah, finally it's happened, you know?
Yeah. So I mentioned as well that Barbie was almost in Toy Story 1, but Lotso actually is in Toy Story 1.
Really?
There's, if you go back to the start of the film, when they're holding the meeting, and Woody goes, "Oh, you guys on the top shelf, can you hear me?" And a pink bear like looks down and waves and says, "Yep." That's as much as they could animate of Lotso at the time.
Well, look this up.
So the character of Lotso was in a draft of the first film, but they just couldn't animate fur at the time.
Right, okay. No, that makes sense. Because the story of Lotso feels like the abandoned story of Woody from the original concept.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm looking at him now. He's not exactly Lotso, but it could be like...
No, he doesn't really look like him, but it's a pink teddy bear.
Yeah, and in universe, it could be like Generation 1 Lotso, you know?
Although Lotso was released in because they released a viral ad for Toy Story 3 that's like the commercial circa 1983 for Lotso Hug and Beer.
Yeah.
And it's like, he smells like strawberries. And it's real well done. It's like uploaded by a channel called like Mr. Crazy Commercials or something like that. It's got 2 other videos. So it's like, it looks real legit. But,
it could be like a Lotso beer that's been hugged and worn out so that it's faded and lost.
Right. Yeah, so, but apparently in Toy Story 3, the fur for Lotso wasn't actually the biggest challenge. It was actually the trash bags.
They look great. I did notice how good the trash bags look.
Because the like polyethylene vinyl or whatever it is that they're made out of has its very particular properties and how it like reflects light, how it absorbs light, and all that. And yeah, but they look good.
It looks good. It looks good.
But yeah, just a couple more little things. John Morris comes back as Andy.
Cool.
The same voice actor plays Andy, and apparently no one had like been in contact with him since Toy Story 2, but they managed to get his phone number, and they're like, fuck, what if he doesn't act anymore? What if he doesn't sound right? And they called him, and they got the answering machine. It's like, hi, this is John. And they're like, oh my god, yes, he's perfect. And like he's got an interesting voice because he does still sound really young.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, he's got like a youthful innocence about his voice, which works for the character.
Do you know who plays young Andy in Toy Story 3? Like when we see him?
It's a different. It's not like archival footage of him or anything like that. But the person who voices young Andy also voices one of the peas in the pod.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, and also, if you're wondering, actually, I'll come back to this later. So, did you have any more questions, or do you want to move on to some segments?
My next question was just going to lead into my continue the franchise. If we wanted.
Okay, well, I've got one other thing before continue the franchise.
Okay.
So, listeners of this podcast who have listened to this podcast
that's all our listeners
might know that we talk about titles a lot on this podcast.
I forgot.
Huh?
I'd forgotten.
So, a couple of years ago, Lee Unkrich was on. We got hit up Twitter and revealed that there was about 200 alternate titles for Toy Story.
Really?
Did you know about this?
No, man. I'm very interested to hear them because I have almost nothing to say about the titles as they are.
Well, okay. So, are you ready for 200 alternate titles?
Yeah.
No, well, there's not 200. He tweeted a few.
Okay, tell me
of these. So I'll give you them and you give me what you think.
Okay.
On it, like before we get there, I don't think you'll find any of these better than Toy Story.
Okay.
So let's just not say, oh, it's not as good as Toy Story. So just let me know what you think of them. So the new toy.
It doesn't allow for sequels.
Yeah,
that's what you'd call it if there wasn't another. Yeah, it wouldn't be a good franchise name.
Yeah, made in Taiwan.
It's a cool title, but it doesn't suit the overall aesthetic, I don't think.
Yeah, Moving Buddies.
I like that. Again, it's not... you don't go, oh, Moving Buddies, the movie about toys. But it's a cool...
Yeah.
It is a cool way, I get it. If this was a film about buddy cops, it'd be a good... I don't know how you could...
Yeah, well, because it is kind of a buddy movie.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
To Infinity and Beyond.
Nah, it's not a title.
Yeah, Wind Up Heroes.
I mean, none of them will wind up, but yeah, that's all right.
The Cowboy and the Spaceman.
That's cool, man. That's cool. It's not, it's not better than Toy Story, but it's a very pulpy, Pulp Fiction-y kind of title.
Yeah. Spurs and Rockets.
Nah, it's not clear enough what they're... It's not about toys. Okay. That's the problem with that. I mean, a lot of those are the same thing, as you've got to put the word toy or something that refers to toys in the title.
Yeah.
I always wanted to make a short film about someone named Tori who gets controlled by her toys and call it Toys Tori. Thought that'd be kind of fun.
Nice. Are you familiar with the film Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia?
Yes, I'm aware of the title.
By title, yeah. So, in reference to that, one of the titles is "Bring Me the Arm of Buzz Lightyear."
That sounds more like a book title than a movie title.
Yeah. Wind the Frog.
Is that
I don't know
referring
what
to
that's
anything?
referring
Yeah.
Rex's first movie.
Are you serious? Why would it be called that? Was Rex a character outside of this?
No, I don't think so. For the Love of Peep.
These are starting to sound like James Bond titles.
Yeah. Toys in the Hood.
No way. These are starting to. Were these also repurposed as Robot Chicken episode titles?
Maybe.
I think some of these were. Yeah.
Each sold separately.
That's cool.
Wings and Pull Strings.
That's cool. These aren't movie titles. Is the problem?
Yeah. Like because I think he said like this is like they opened it up for anyone to like submit a title, and these feel like yeah. Some assembly required.
That's cool. Yeah, that'd be a good like slogan for the film.
Yeah. The tagline. We talk about taglines now.
Yeah.
The favorite.
That's the short story that Toy Story is based on. You know.
Yeah. And last one. You are a toy.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
That's the only one that rivals Toy Story as like a franchise name, I think.
Yeah. You are a toy too. Oh, you are a toy too? Oh, they should have called it that.
Vomiting from how much you wish something was called something.
As we've all done. And apparently they considered calling A Bug's Life a Bug Story or Bug Story, but they didn't want to be stuck, a superhero story, fish story, rat story.
I love idiosyncrasies, but if they had called it Bug Story and then Monsters Inc. comes out and it's not called Monsters Story, which is probably the last one you could really call it that for, I'd be
well. You got like Car Story, Rat Story,
but
Fish Story.
What Old Man Story? What is the theme of Up? Like Pixar films got a lot less themed by like there's the toy movie, the bug movie. Then you get Up.
Yeah. What if toys had
Coco.
feelings? What if
Yeah.
What if bugs had stories? What if Mexicans had feelings?
Yeah. Sweet.
So now it's time to continue the franchise.
Sick.
So there are 3 shorts and 2 TV specials. The shorts are like 5-ish minutes. TV specials are 21 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen one of the shorts, but I haven't seen any of the others.
Mm-hmm. What are they called?
So there's Partysaurus Rex, Small Fry. I can't remember the name of the other short.
Something about Hawaii.
Hawaiian Vacation. And then there's the Toy Story of Terror and Toy Story That Time Forgot.
Because those are kind of my favourite titles within the broader Toy Story
Right, Hawaiian
franchise.
Vacation.
No, Toy Story That Time Forgot and Toy Story of Terror. I wouldn't have hated it if the sequels instead of 2 and 3 were called Toy Story something something.
Yeah. So they denied that they were doing a Toy Story 4 for a long, long time. However, eventually they came up with an idea that was just too good to pass up. John Lasseter was set to return with Rashida Jones and Will McCormick writing after Pixar was impressed by their film Celeste and Jessie Forever. Mm-hmm. This is Rashida Jones from Parks and Rec, which also stars Adam Scott. However, John Lasseter announced that he was stepping down as director and eventually leaving Disney. Do you want to say why, AJ?
He was one of the people involved in the Me Too scandals, right? So he, I'm honest. I feel like I need to be like, this is what he's accused of, and obviously next to Harvey Weinstein, it's not as bad. But I feel like you don't even really need to say how bad things are. It's disappointing to know that John Lasseter is a bit of a substantial creep. But I don't think it
so
speaks
John
for
Lasseter
Pixar.
was one that he came out and was like, I've been doing this, I'm stepping down. He was never like accused of anything.
Right.
He came out and was like, I'm a hugger. I care a lot and I love a lot, and so he's been known to like invade people's personal space a little bit. It's with the odd wayward hug. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying, like, he came out and said this. It's not like people were like, we need to get John Lester out because he's a creep. He came out and said, I'm ashamed of my behavior, so I'm stepping down.
Right.
So he stepped down as director, and then Josh Cooley took over directing, who was the head of story on Inside Out. And eventually, in January of this year, Stephanie Folsom replaced the writers, who left at the end of 2017 due to philosophical differences. And it said that Rashida Jones didn't like working with John Lasseter because of that stuff.
Yeah.
So Stephanie Folsom, you might have known because she's written Toy Story 4 is her only writing credit.
Yay! This looks hopeful.
But no, she has a popular blacklist script called 1969: A Space Odyssey, or How Kubrick Learned to Stop Worrying and Land on the Moon, which is like a fictional script about someone hiring Stanley Kubrick to fake the moon landing.
That's great. That's a great title.
And she also, if you Google her name, you'll see a slew of tweets that she wrote the story for Thor Ragnarok, but was denied credit by the Writers Guild.
Oh, wow. I feel like, to return to our Reddit comments that we see heaps, this isn't exactly a shower thought, but whenever Toy Story 4 gets brought up, I feel like people are very cynical about it. And I understand that. I kind of like trilogies more than quadrilogies as like just as a symmetrical thing. And you are, with every sequel you continue to make, you're in danger of breaching a legacy, you know? So even if Toy Story 4 is subpar but still good, you still now don't have a perfect franchise in Toy Story, you know? You have a friend in me, but you don't have a perfect franchise in Toy Story.
So, yeah, a couple more things. So apparently Annie Potts has confirmed that about 3/4 of the script is scrapped. It's been described as a rom-com and not a sequel to Toy Story 3, but a standalone film.
I've heard that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that, and again, it's like, well, why call it Toy Story 4 then if it's not even that? You're probably just about to bring this up, but are you gonna, like, Tim Allen cried about it?
Let me get to that.
Yeah.
Let me get to it.
Okay.
So the sequel, the story that's been that we've been told is that it's about Bonnie's Toys helping Woody to reunite with Bo Peep, who wasn't in Toy Story 3 because they realised that, like, a porcelain doll wouldn't survive the events of it, which is what I was going to bring up earlier when I was like, well, I'll come back to this. Right. So if you were wondering, that's what that was.
That's the claw of this podcast.
Yeah, so the Randy Newman's coming back to score. Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, and Christian Schall are all returning, and also Laurie Metcalf's returning, which is interesting. Andy's mum.
Is Andy?
Haven't heard yet, but I guess it does make sense if Bonnie's still in it because they're like friends.
Their mums are
Laurie
friends.
Metcalf could have a little cameo. But yeah, so very recently, as you're about to say before I so rudely interrupted you, Tim Allen, and this is like in the last week or two, Tim Allen was on a talk show and said that it's going to make everyone ugly cry like the end of Toy Story 3. He said some of the final scenes he couldn't even get through himself.
It's weird thinking of Tim Allen as an emotional person, eh? Never seen him like act with emotion.
Did you also hear what he compared it to?
What did he compare it to?
He said he compared it to Infinity War.
Oh, God.
So it's interesting, but he said...
Mr.
He's like,
Lightyear, I don't feel so good.
He said, I can't, like, give anything away kind of thing, but he said Infinity War is like a series of vignettes that no one thought could work, and this is what this is. So that's interesting that he's like... Because he says he's like a huge superhero movie nerd, and so he's like, you know, he was aware of how stacked the odds were against Infinity War being good, and it's kind of good to see him acknowledge that it's the same for Toy Story 4, that no one's expecting this to be good.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, like, fuck, I think it's going to be great.
The story, I actually think that sounds like a good idea for a story to follow the Bo Peep stuff. And it also brings a nice little thing where this will mean that every sequel was signposted in the movie before it. Because Toy Story 1 references Zurg and Al's Toy Barn. Toy Story 2 has that, Stinky Pete mentioning the landfill. And Toy Story 3 has them mentioning that Bo Peep's gone now.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to tell me the plots of the films, like just in a sentence, the trying to reunite with Bo Peep doesn't excite me as much as the other ones necessarily.
Yeah.
But they showed some footage at Cine Europe, which it mainly just introduced new heroes, including a Hawaiian girl paper doll called Lulu. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have any, like, the end of Toy Story 3 is so perfect as a goodbye to the franchise, but they've said it's like the only reason that they know what we're all thinking and they feel the same way. And they were like, yeah, the only reason we're doing this is because it's so good.
Well, okay, and
this
Pixar
is
we
Pixar
trust,
we're
man.
talking about.
And Pixar we trust. They've let me down a couple of times, but not that many times.
Yeah, they've got enough good graces with me.
Yeah.
I feel like the maximum this film can get on Rotten Tomatoes is like in the 80s.
Right.
I feel. I don't think we're going to get 100%.
And
Toy
that's
Story
more
4.
a statement on Rotten Tomatoes
Yeah.
than Toy Story.
Yeah.
See Venom, which is currently on 25% and is at least a 40% movie.
Yeah, it's like Venom's fine. I quite enjoyed it, but because it's not the best movie you've ever seen, it was never gonna scratch above like 30, which is a shame, and that's just how Rotten Tomatoes works. But yeah, I think we are going to get a good Toy Story 4. Whether or not it maintains its perfect score is yet to be seen. I don't think it will, but I think I'm going to enjoy the film, and I think I'm probably going to cry. But also, this isn't like, oh, they're making a Toy Story 4. This comes out in like 7 months.
Yeah.
So I know, like, more than that. It comes out June next year. And we haven't really seen like a poster. We haven't even really had anything that's like officially announced it, other than like, if you're in like, you know, you follow film stuff, you know, it's there. But The Incredibles, we got a first trailer at the end of November, and that came out in June of this year. So hopefully we'll get some kind of announcement trailer coming next month.
Wow.
And then, but The
pretty
Incredibles like story trailer didn't come till like April. And then the film came out in June, so hopefully they don't leave it that late again.
Right.
Because I remember for The Incredibles 2, I was like, this isn't a good sign that they're leaving it this late.
But then it was still
They
a good
ended up
movie.
being good.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. All right.
yeah, now AJ, continue the franchise. Do you have one? And I believe you have a question that
Well, the question was what we were talking about before, is there a code that the toys stick to that means they don't interact with humans, and it's only broken in circumstances such as Woody talking to Sid, which I kind of want to explore that more. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
I want the, maybe Woody is in trouble. Maybe Sid comes out and he's on TV and he's like, a toy talk to
gay.
me. Yeah, we can be gay too. And and Woody's in trouble with like a toy police, you know, like let's get into the practicalities of that. And I think more so than that, I'm
But he's
interested.
the sheriff.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's even more gossipy there.
Who polices the police?
Yeah. Toy Story 4, Who Watches the Watchmen? And I kind of would like to see and I kind of can't believe there hasn't been this in the Toy Story universe. Not one toy has gone rogue. Not one toy has rebelled that we've seen and gone like, no, actually, I am a sentient being. I deserve rights. I don't deserve to be thrown into a landfill. I don't deserve to be played with by like kids who don't know how to play with me. And so I kind of want to see a renegade toy. Perhaps Woody goes fugitive.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily Woody, but I think that's an interesting place to take a fourth film. Yeah, I like it.
It does kind of bring the inconsistencies of the world to light, though, which I think if I was a writer,
you don't
would
want
stay
to
away
be shining
from.
a light on that.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just me being Sil and trying to come up with an idea.
Yeah. Also, talking about Toy Story 4, I think I should point out as well that Don Rickles, it's confirmed that he died before being able to record any lines.
Right.
So I don't know what that means for Mr. Potato Head's appearing in the film, which is a shame because he was good as well. But Bud Lucky though recorded lines before he died, and I think. I don't know. This is partly a continue the franchise, but partly just speculating about Toy Story 4. But do you reckon like Bo Peep's gonna break?
Yeah.
And we're gonna
She'll
explore what happens.
What where like she'll break and she'll die, or she'll break and still be alive?
Well, because I don't know. I mean, and maybe we'll see what happens. But like, because we've established that she's porcelain. The creators were like, she wouldn't survive this, and now it's like this going on this big epic adventure with her in tow, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be closure. So whether she breaks or whatever, there's got to be like a happy ending that we get to at the end. Like the thing about Toy Story 3, especially after what was set up in Toy Story 2, is that it really does flirt with the tragic life, the tragic nature of being a toy, and so. That's, I think, maybe why I thought they were going to die. Even going into Toy Story 3, I was like, how is this movie going to have a satisfying ending? Because, like, I have one toy that I still have on my person, like, from my childhood. It's in my room somewhere. I can't find it. I don't know where it is because I lose it for 9 months at a time and then be like, oh, yeah, this thing. So, like...
What is it?
It's a rabbit named Huddles. Shut up. You cried in Toy Story 3, you pussy. No,
I've got heaps of soft toys. I've got a giant, like, 4 foot tall bear behind me.
So yeah, I remember going into Toy Story 3 and being like, why would Andy give a shit about his toys? Why would he care that he's giving them away? And like they kind of played into it being more like sentimental value for him than anything else. And fair enough, Andy seemed to play with toys a lot more for a lot longer than I did when I was a kid. I did maths and accounting. Just kidding. Or I did, and maybe I just wasn't good at it. So to me, I'm like, there is always this undertone of the more we see of the Toy Story, the sadder it's inevitably going to get.
Toy Story.
Yeah. Like, are they immortal? There's another question. Do they just live forever? Do they die in the heat death of the universe? Like, what is the deal?
Yeah. That actually reminds me of another thing. Surely Toy Story 4 has to incorporate in some way that, like, people don't really play with toys anymore. They go on their phones.
Oh, that is absolutely going to be a plot point in Toy Story 4.
Yeah, because if they're still with Bonnie, who was 9 years ago, and she's now, some other age.
14.
She's 12.
12, yeah.
Yeah, she hasn't
been playing with toys for 5 years anyway, so they're back in the same problem they were in beforehand.
But, she's like Riley's age and Inside Out kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, she's going to have a smartphone. She's going to have a tablet. And on the whole, the world is kind of not playing with toys anymore. So I feel like that's what it has to be about, right?
Do apps sentient?
Yeah, well, maybe, and this is my continue the franchise, Woody and the gang have to go inside the apps and maybe they break the internet. And it's called Woody Breaks the Internet, Toy Story 4.
Perfect. Good stuff.
Now, one thing I'd like to say that I think could be cool for this universe is, and maybe it exists in some form, but I'd like to see like fully lean into it, of like a video game of this world that like fully leans into the stealth element of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can't be found out that you're a toy. Maybe it's just like a small little web game, like Slender Man-y kind of length. But it's like there's some kind of objective, and it's about using the room around you to stay hidden.
Yeah. Cool. It's a good idea.
Yeah. It wasn't that good of an idea, but I kind of gave a couple of ideas.
Before we kind of tailspin into a close here, we probably don't have time to read out all our fan mail because we have quite a lot this week, but I do want to read out a message that we got sent this week from a guy named Joey Ando. Can we do this now? Is that all good? Sweet. He said, "Hello, fellas. I recently discovered your show."
Hello, Joey.
Hello, Joey. I recently discovered your show due to a Reddit post about your earbud asphyxiation, and I've been binging your show since, but I'm really looking forward to your Toy Story episode. Hope you haven't recorded it yet. Well, we hadn't when you sent this.
Oh, we're in the middle of it. Oh,
I know
sorry,
I'll
dude.
hear your rankings for the trilogy, but I wanted to vent about my difficulty in ranking the series. I'm inclined to say that the third is the best one because it feels the tightest in dialogue, suspense, and action, but the first feels like it has the cleanest and most meaningful conflict. The third film is the only one that made me cry in theaters, but only because I've become emotionally mature enough for that, though I wasn't ready for it when I was 4. Guess my age. Same age as us? I don't know.
No, it'd be 2 years older.
2 years older. The original is the only one in the series with Randy Newman's heartbreaking soundtrack, which isn't true, is it? Randy Newman did all 3, didn't
No,
he?
he's done the soundtrack for all of them, and he actually won the Oscar for a song in the third one.
Okay.
We Belong Together, and that was the first time to win an Oscar.
And he says, and I feel its absence in the sequels, which is interesting because there wasn't one. He says, Toy Story 2 is good too. Anyway, I love your show. Both of you are delightful, and please don't do your Batman episode until we have another few good movies. Maybe do it last, so 9 years from now, give or take. So thank you so much for that message, Joey. That's so nice of you to say those wonderful things about us, that we're both delightful. I've been thinking about this a lot, this message, and the fact that he says he struggles ranking them. And this goes back to what I've said a few times in this podcast, that to me, the reason why Toy Story currently is the best trilogy, the best franchise potentially, on its own terms at least, is not because they get better as they go along, but it's because they're so difficult to rank. Because
it's because they're consistent.
Yeah, because if a trilogy gets better as it goes along, that reflects poorly on the first one. I've never thought about this before until I read his message. What's so special?
Not necessarily, like with something like Toy Story, where it's like there were actually limitations in the first one.
Sure, but
the ability to make the films gets better, and therefore the films get better.
Sure,
like that wouldn't necessarily reflect badly on the first one.
Sure, but it still means that by the end of the 3 films, one is better than another one. You know what I mean? So So if they get better as they go along, 3 is better than 1. What I think is so special about Toy Story is that it depends on the mood you're in. It depends where you are in your life. I genuinely, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago before we started rewatching it, I would have said 3, 2, 1. They get better as they go along. But then I rewatched 1 and I was like, this is so much better than I remembered it being. And then I watched 2 and I was like, oh, this speaks to my soul. And then I watched 3 and I was like, this is such one of the best cinematic emotional payoffs ever made. And what I think is great, is that they are unrankable, and that is better to me than a series that gets better as they go along.
Yeah. All right, so how would you rank them?
You're undercutting my, wonderful monologue there. No, as I said before,
well, with that undercut...
Yeah. We're heading out?
Yeah, let's head out.
All right, so...
All right, we're pulling out of the driveway. We're bloody...
Wait, we left Woody behind.
Oh no, let's turn around.
Oh my gosh.
This is called improvise.
Our number plate, it says A113.
Hey, nice.
So the
thanks for listening to one of our longest episodes about a 3-film franchise.
This is the longest we've done for the shortest franchise. We did about this length for Mission Impossible.
film to time ratio. This is fucking out the window.
Yeah.
It always happens when I do the research that tends to, the episodes go on real fucking long.
Oh, yeah. Hey, well, it's going to be long next franchise as well, because usually what we do now is we randomly select the next franchise, but because this month is Halloween, we thought we'd do Halloween. So,
and also there's a new Halloween film coming out.
So we're going to be and continuing the tradition we set up with Freddy vs. Jason and Scream and Hellraiser. Our next franchise, we're doing our 1 to 2 a year where we choose which one we do to tie into a release, and we're doing it for Halloween. So yeah, tune in next franchise fortnight,
and then our patrons will still be able to choose the one we do after that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So tune in next time for Halloween. There's 10 films in Halloween.
11.
Okay, so including the new one, there'll be 11.
Yeah, and so head along to. We'll put our post up to suggest what we cover after Halloween. We'll put that up either now or very shortly. And go ahead and vote. Thank you for suggesting Toy Story. It was a wonderful time watching this.
Yeah.
I will be once again doing the research for Halloween. So I hope you at home like listening to me doing all the research for big horror franchises as much as I like doing it, because fuck you, I'm not changing who I am.
And I get to do long-winded dog franchises. So if you want to tell us which franchise to do after Halloween, you can become a patron for as little as $1 at patreon.com/cultpopture. But if you just want to support the mainline stream of the show, you can also do that by visiting our Facebook page. We're Cult Popture on Facebook. We're Cult Popture on YouTube. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming out shortly that isn't inherently podcast related. If you follow our Instagram, you've seen that I've just finished filming what will be a series. So I don't want to say too much right away, but that's coming out.
Man.
We're also on SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever you're listening to this, Twitter, Instagram, as I said, or you can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. We're gonna head on out because I feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes is about the limit.
Yeah. And I would love to hear what questions you guys have about the Toy Story universe, or if you have any other answers to a question that AJ or myself asked on this podcast.
Yeah, that'd be great to hear. Cool. Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Talofa.